Welcome back to Court TV. At the center of the defamation trial between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard are really serious allegations of domestic abuse on both sides. We haven't yet heard from Amber Heard on the witness stand, but in a 2018 Washington Post op-ed, Heard alleged she was a victim of domestic abuse and sexual violence. Various witnesses testifying on behalf of Johnny Depp and the actor himself, of course on the stand, testified that Heard was actually the one who was abusive in their relationship. So we want to have a deeper conversation about domestic violence as it relates to Depp and Heard and this defamation trial. And we have, of course, our special guest this afternoon, Melba Pearson. She is former homicide prosecutor and a domestic violence expert in Miami, Florida. So happy to have you this afternoon and your expertise to really help educate our viewers on this very serious issue. I think at Court TV we're so used to having murder trials that we follow every day, and this one is alleging domestic violence, still a very serious issue here. And so far in the testimony, I know it's Johnny Depp's case, and his story is that he never hit a woman, as we just played in our previous segment, but he's alleging that Amber Heard, his wife, was the perpetrator of violence. So talk about how men can be victims of violence as well.
Yeah, so thank you for this, Chanley, because definitely it's really important to raise awareness around this issue. Many times domestic violence, domestic abuse is rooted in this traditional thought process of only a woman could be a victim or a survivor of domestic abuse. And it's very clear through many studies and just encountering so many people that have had this issue in their lives, either through growing up with it or through friends, family, etc., that men can be victims of domestic abuse, and also people in same-sex relationships can be victims or survivors of domestic abuse. It's just a matter of the pattern of control and violence, and it can come about through various forms of whether it be manipulation. So it could be financial in nature. I'm withholding money from you in order to get you to do what I want, what I want you to do. It could be sexual in nature, which could involve sexual assault as a means of control and exerting power over the person. It could be ways of isolating them away from family and friends so that, again, they're only within the purview of their abuser. They're not able to go out with friends, go out with family members, and have other folks that can help get them out of the situation. So anyone from any strata of life, no matter how much money you have, what race you are, what your gender identity is, anyone can be a victim and eventually a survivor of a domestic abuse.
That's right. And of course, this trial drawing attention to that. Even multi-millionaire celebrities are someone who can be a potential victim of abuse. And a theme I've been hearing from Amber Heard's defense is really trying to get Johnny Depp to agree, which he did, that there's many forms of domestic abuse, because her op-ed focuses on domestic abuse in general. It does also specifically say sexual violence as well in the title of that online edition. But speak about how abuse comes in many different forms, which is what he agreed to, and why that's important for her case, just in case this jury may think, oh, did physical violence actually occur here?
Yeah, so there are a number of forms of violence. Like I touched on a moment ago, there's the financial or economic violence. It could be physical violence, which is what I think many of us are most familiar with. There could be sexual violence. There could be emotional manipulation. So again, it could be playing on your partner's feelings and making them feel guilty about wanting to go out with their friends or wanting to buy a new, pair of pants or whatever the case may be. So there could be that manipulation to have that power and control over the person. That is what domestic abuse is about. Bottom line, it's about power and control and using whatever tool at the abuser's disposal to be able to have that power and control over their intimate partner. So in her instance, it could have been physical. It could have been more verbal abuse, where he could be cursing at her and calling her all sorts of names, calling her very derogatory things with the intent of breaking down her self-esteem so that she complies and does whatever it is he wants him to do. And whatever that thing could be very simple, like, don't leave me, right? It doesn't have to be, I want you to set the table or I want you to cook dinner. It could literally just be, I'm doing this to strip you away and make you feel like you're nothing so that you will not leave me.
Yes, and we've heard those recordings, of course, from both sides here about some verbal abuse, name calling, yelling, that type of thing. In your expertise, though, how difficult is it to prove domestic violence in court? What type of evidence will be strongest for both sides, and what that looks like? And have they done that so far?
Yeah, so having prosecuted domestic violence cases, they definitely can be an uphill battle because of, number one, the emotional nature and the very personal nature of the type of testimony that will have to come out in court, right? You also have the issue that, again, because domestic violence can come in so many forms, there may not necessarily be doctor's reports, hospital visits, not necessarily, the police aren't necessarily called every time that there's a domestic violence incident, right? Sometimes the parties involved just don't call the police. Sometimes you have a situation where the neighbors may hear things going on, but they don't want to get involved, so they don't call the police. So you struggle with having those records to show that this happened. So in this case, many of those things are present from the standpoint of, yes, there's a number of recordings, but it just sounds very much like a toxic relationship. There's no clear evidence at this juncture that there was abuse in whatever form. A lot of it, again, was just about toxicity and her yelling at him yelling at her, which again is part of the domestic violence relationship dynamic, right? Because you may have a situation where, I'm not going to say that he's the abuser. I'm not going to assume that right off the bat. We'll have to let the trial play out. But if he did something to her last week, well, the next week she may want to retaliate or be still very angry and upset over what occurred, and she may lash out. So that's what often makes the relationship so complicated, because it's not always just cut and dry, so-and-so abused, and then that was the end of it.
Sure, the more I'm listening to you, the more I think this jury needs to hear from an expert like you to explain the intricacies of domestic violence partnerships. I know they've heard from a couple of experts so far, really. Well, one was Dr. Shannon Curry, the psychologist, who talked about some of the personality disorders of Amber Heard and the characteristics of that, which echoed what we've heard from Johnny Depp about her handling or mishandling arguments. Also, this jury heard from the marriage counselor who met with both Johnny Depp and Amber Heard together separately and drew a conclusion. In her opinion, this was a mutual abuse situation. Let's take a listen to those two experts and generally what they told this jury so far.
What were you asked to provide expert opinion on?
So initially, my role that I understood at the time was to review the case materials and provide my opinions regarding anything that I noticed that was consistent or even inconsistent with the psychological science that exists today on intimate partner violence in Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard's relationship.
You used a phrase there, intimate partner violence. What are you talking about?
So there are a multitude of different definitions depending on the source or the state, but essentially intimate partner violence is abuse. It could be physical, psychological, and it's from one partner to another in an intimate relationship.
Is it your testimony that while Mr. Depp may have said he wasn't violent with any of his other partners, there was violence from Mr. Depp toward Amber, correct?
Yes, you're right. He had been well controlled, I think, for almost, 20, 30 years. And both were victims of abuse in their homes. But I thought he had been well controlled for decades. And then with Ms. Heard, he was triggered, and they engaged in what I saw as mutual abuse. Sometimes, I know she led on more than one occasion and started it to keep him with her, because abandonment and having him leave was her worst nightmare. And I think he may have initiated it on occasions too, that I'm less sure on.
And how did you come to the understanding that on some occasions Ms. Heard physically abused Mr. Depp.
Ms. Heard reported that.
So, Melba, in your estimation, hearing those two witnesses, both called by Depp's team in his case, what, if anything, did they do to move the ball down the field for Johnny Depp?
I mean, I think they muddied the waters a little bit, but here's what it comes down to. It is possible that they both could be perpetrators of domestic violence, of intimate partner violence, and they both could be victims and survivors of intimate partner violence, right? Again, people are thinking about this in the binary, that one has to be the aggressor and one always has to be the victim, and that's always the dynamic day after day. Sometimes the dynamic can shift, again, because both of them grew up with abuse in their households, and a large majority of the people that grow up with abuse in their households either grow up to become abusers or to become victims themselves, right? Because that is their earliest form of understanding what a relationship should look like. So if you have a flawed model to start with, it becomes more difficult to enter into a healthy relationship. So by saying that he, in fact, could have been a victim, that she admitted to initiating violence, it shows again that they have that toxic, intimate partner violence relationship. But again, that doesn't exactly answer the question of whether or not she defamed Johnny Depp by writing ghostwriting the op-ed that she did in the Washington Post. Because again, if he did at one point hit her, then she's telling the truth, and that's the end of the case, basically. Because in these types of cases, in defamation cases, truth is the ultimate defense. And if she can show it's true, then he doesn't exactly have a legal leg to stand on from that perspective.
Yeah, that's why it's so important who this jury believes. And Melba, you're going to keep hanging out with me. I got plenty more for you coming up. We're going to keep picking your brain about domestic violence in the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Chanley Painter. Let's continue our conversation on domestic violence with our special guest, former homicide prosecutor and domestic violence expert, Melba Pearson. Melba, we've heard a lot of recordings and videos so far in this trial, both sides using these recordings and these videos to try to buttress their case that the other person was the abuser in this toxic relationship. Let's take a look at a couple of these recordings from our Court TV file, and then I want to get your expert take on them.
I'm not going to be in a physical altercation with you.
Then don't.
You hit me last night, you
What about all the other times you split? Come on, you cannot act like that's about that. It's
well,
not.
Well, on a plane, I can't split.
No, and you hit back, so don't act like you don't participate.
I pushed you.
I'm not going to get into the details of that fight. You and I both know that you split when there is no physical violence involved. And that you do it like at the very beginning of fights these days. And if you split and you go into a different room and you don't actually leave that house, it does nothing but perpetuate the fight. And you don't actually do it respectfully. You don't do it in a way that actually means we won't fight. It always makes more fights. It always makes them longer. It never, ever makes you calmer. You never come out going, I want to talk, or I'm okay, or it's going to be okay. And I am I'm sick and tired 100% of being the only one that goes and fights for it. You know what that does? It demoralizes the half of this relationship that is me. It demeans me, demoralizes me.
Really?
Yes, really. Really, when you split on me, how do you feel when I leave you?
When I split, when I go into the other room, you said.
You leave you get another room, you get a flight, things like that. And you asked me not to in Australia, and ever since
then,
how many? I don't know, I have to count them up.
No, because I haven't left you in a house, maybe twice. Last night and another time.
No, you've done it before. I've come here before. I'm not doing that anymore.
Well, yeah, you've come here before. Last time and another time, and then last night.
You've done this several times, and getting me a room. I mean, getting another room in a hotel is just the same thing. What happened? What happened? No.
So then nothing happened to you this morning?
Yeah, you're right. I just woke up and you were so sweet and nice. We were not even fighting this morning. All I did was say sorry.
Did something happen to you this morning? I don't think so.
No, that's the thing.
You want to see crazy? I'll give you. Oh, you're crazy. You're crazy.
Have you drunk this whole thing this morning?
Oh, you got this. You got this going?
Just started it.
Oh, really? Really?
Melba Pearson, in your experience, in your expertise, what, if anything, stood out to you from those recordings?
The theme of abandonment. We heard from one of the experts that abandonment was definitely a trigger for Amber Heard, and I would argue that it was also a trigger for Johnny Depp as well, because for him, whenever there's a dispute, rather than trying to calmly talk it out, he gets up and leaves. And that, of course, then takes things to another level because Amber Heard feels abandoned. She gets upset. She's obviously trying to fight for the relationship in her viewpoint and the only way that she knows how. So that continues the anger and the resentment that just keeps fueling and boiling over day after day after day. Also, the footage was very disturbing with regards to, him clearly drinking red wine first thing in the morning. Listen, I'm not one to judge, it is what it is. But clearly, if you're in a toxic situation like that, that fueling of the alcohol is going to continue to make the boundaries go down, and it's more likely for there to be violence and for horrible words to be said, things that you can't take back. And those injuries, again, roll over day, causing more resentment, which can then contribute to the toxic nature of the relationship, with Amber feeling the need to lash back out. And towards the end of the video, it looked like there was a physical altercation. You can't really tell who instigated or whatever the case may be. But again, I think that takes away from Johnny Depp's position that I've never struck a woman. I've never, been abusive in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, that was that mega pint of wine, by the way, but disturbing nonetheless. And he claimed he was just assaulting some cabinets in that recording on the stand. I want to take a look, though, at some of the photos in evidence, or will be in evidence, of potential injuries that Johnny Depp claims were perpetrated on him by Amber Heard, and of course that Amber Heard claims she suffered at the hands of Johnny Depp. Here's Amber Heard. Some of those photos is after she filed the restraining order. What do you make of these photos? First, let's start with Amber, and then of course bring up Johnny. There's Johnny's as well. Melba.
Yeah, well, in Amber's, you definitely see some bruising under the eye that could be consistent with a punch or a slap or something along those lines. You see hair that could be consistent with hair being, pulled from her head if in fact Johnny Depp grabbed her by the hair. So there's definitely something there, and obviously a judge saw fit to put in place a restraining order. In order to get a restraining order, the judge has to review the facts as set forth by one of the parties and make a determination as to whether or not there is a potential for a risk to the life of the person that is asking for this restraining order. So clearly the judge saw fit to separate the two of them through the use of a restraining order, which does lend some credibility to Amber Heard's claim. So again, we have to sort of see more what comes out and go from there.
Right, exactly, Melba. And it was interesting to me in opening statements, the defense said they would call an expert to show that the injuries in the photo didn't reflect the brutality that she will allege when she's on the stand. Some inconsistencies there. I'm running out of time with you this afternoon, though. Thank you so much, Melba, for joining me and lending us your expertise. If you at home know someone who's a victim of domestic violence, there is help. You can call a National Domestic Violence Hotline. The number is 800-799-SAFE or 800-799-7233. Stick with us here on Court TV.